Does this seem familiar to you? There it is, the best character ever made. Now draw them moving. To avoid this from happening, I am going to show you how we can learn to draw better and more dynamic poses. To start off, I like to separate poses into 3 stages of difficulty: easy, medium, and hard. Poses in the easy to medium bracket are very good for character design and concept art, whilst hard poses are best used in big illustrations, like for example splash art. One small detail that is often overlooked is that when drawing a pose, we want our characters to be as free of detail as possible. Details will just confuse us and make it harder to focus on the actual pose. Also, when drawing a pose, use loose and confident lines. Avoid chicken scratches, because they will make it more difficult to understand the movement of our pose. With that out of the way, let's start with the easy poses. These poses are mostly idle poses with little to no movement. Idle poses are mostly used in things like concept art. They show the most of a character and thus are better suited to showing off a design. Of course, this has a significant drawback. This being that they tend to be very boring. And that's why we don't really want to be stuck at this difficulty. But what separates a pose like this from a pose like this? To make a stiff pose more dynamic, the easiest thing to do is to add some offset. Offset is the breaking of symmetry. In posing, symmetry is boring, because it doesn't convey movement. To achieve some offset, things like the shoulder and hips shouldn't be parallel to each other. Simple changes in direction, nothing major, just tweak them a little. And now, when we put all of this together, look at the difference. With just some small adjustments, we have created a pose that is perfect for character design, or for a character that's just simply standing idle in any given environment. The good thing about poses in this difficulty setting is that they are easy and fast to learn. The next step on our posing journey is the medium difficulty. In terms of posing a character, this is where I would put my current skill level. Poses in this difficulty bracket are characterized by having a lot more movement. They are less idle and shift the body around more. This is where terms like line of action are going to start popping up a lot more often than before. The line of action is used to quickly and easily find the movement within a pose. We can also add a more dynamic feel to our pose by having it be imbalanced. An imbalanced pose will never be symmetrical, and as we already established, symmetry is not very dynamic. But be aware to not disregard gravity. An imbalanced pose does not equal an unstable pose. So when drawing an unbalanced pose, keep the character's center of gravity in mind. Of course, this implies that our character is standing on solid ground, as balance and stability don't really apply when in the air or underwater. These types of poses don't differ drastically from those in difficulty 1. They just add more on top of our already established knowledge. We just need to learn to build on top of what we already know. Last but not least, the hard poses. This is what I would consider the pinnacle of posing. In this bracket, we will find the most advanced poses. Up until now, most of our poses have been rather 2D. So to up the dynamics of our pose, we're going to make it more 3D by adding more perspective. Dynamics and perspective scale relative to each other. This means that the more intense the perspective of a pose, the more dynamic it seems. Another thing that basically goes hand in hand with increased perspective is foreshortening. With foreshortening, we can add more depth to our poses. Little side note here, foreshortening is something that can be applied at any difficulty, but is most prevalent here. But before we end this video, one aspect that doesn't fit into any of these 3 difficulties is the usage of geometrical shapes. At first glance, geometrical shapes seem really useful, as they provide us with structure and volume. But what most don't consider is that they also take away movement. Geometrical shapes are inherently stiff and shouldn't be used to build up a pose. What we want to do is to work with lines, because lines capture movement more easily and naturally, and thus they are a lot better at laying the foundation of a dynamic pose. The last thing that we need to keep in mind is that it gets easier with practice. We need to keep practicing gesture and poses using reference, because only through reference will our brain receive new information, and only through new information is our artistic ability able to grow. Poses are inherently more difficult to learn, because we as humans have a subconscious understanding of how the human body can and is supposed to move. If something is wrong with our poses, it looks off, and maybe even painful. That's why complicated poses are more frustrating to learn, as the margin of error is much smaller than with more idle poses. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching this far in the video. It truly means a lot to me, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye!